Hello YouTube. Um, just on a break from one of my jobs. Damn it. Try to light a cigarette. I need my other hand to do it. Alright. So I just watched, I don't know, earlier today, maybe yesterday, Inspiring Philosophy's video on free will. So I wanted to talk about that video because I thought it was interesting. I consider myself a proponent of something like free will, but I think that his argument is still really unconvincing. That is, I think I'd put it this way: I think any metaphysical argument for free will is unconvincing. I think that I'd say that. But so first of all, I want to say that I'm not going to try to defend Sam Harris's views, because his video is a critique of Sam Harris by way of Alvin Plantinga. I'm not going to try to defend Sam Harris's views because I'm not really a fan of Sam Harris and I don't really care. But he cites three people. He cites Michio Kaku, Ayn Rand, interestingly, and Alvin Plantinga. An interesting constellation of people. It strikes me as being the case that the three of them, that triad, are not talking about the same thing when they talk about free will. So this is what I want to point out, is that there is no no ontology of free will present. What exactly is free will, right? So he points out Michio Kaku saying, of course we have something like free will because the quantum world is not determined, and therefore the universe isn't determined. And that being the case, I can't, on the basis of knowledge of the past, predict what you're going to have for lunch in 10 years, right? Like, therefore the universe isn't this, Newtonian deterministic system, which is really the point that he's trying to make. So notice there, though, that he says that you have something like free will. This is important, because, okay, if you want to say that that's free will, then, well, I can't predict where, a rock is going to be 10 years from now, right? I can't predict the location of, like, a soda can 10 years from now, right? On the basis of quantum indeterminacy. By that logic. So, but obviously I wouldn't call those free will, right? Because there's no will involved. There's nothing, you wouldn't call a rock or a soda can an agent. And agency seems to be tied into what free will is, because, of course it is. Typically when we're talking about free will, it's tied into a conversation of moral culpability and stuff like that. So I guess that if you want to say that quantum indeterminacy, therefore free will, in what sense does a rock or something not have free will? He also brings up the uncertainty principle, right? The observer, right? The observer determines, or has some role in determining the outcome. But what he seems to miss is that it's not actually, the word observer here is not, it doesn't necessarily mean a conscious mind, right? So if you run an experiment purely inside a computer system, for instance, where, a computer tries to measure the position and the, velocity of a particle at the same time through mechanical means. If you try to run that experiment, you'll get the same results. If the computer tries to measure something, then you'll get one result. If it doesn't, you'll get another result. Okay. So then are you going to say that that computer system has free will? Well, I mean, according to this logic, you would have to, but I don't think that that jives with what we typically mean when we talk about free will, right? So this is the kind of weirdness that gets cropped up when you say, when you don't give like some clear notion of what exactly it is that you're trying to defend. So it seems to me that, classically speaking, the notion of free will has to do with the conscious mind and choices made within the conscious mind. That is to say, if I choose to get sour cream and onion chips over salt and vinegar chips, did that choice originate in the conscious mind? That's the question of free will. That's the question that he seems to duck entirely. So, when we talk about causality, right? When we talk about, there might be social forces and forces of memory, forces of genetics, forces of whatever that lead you to pick one over the other. The point isn't that the choice doesn't emerge from me in some sense. The point is that choice doesn't emerge from the grammatical I, or what Husserl would have called the transcendental ego, right? It doesn't emerge from the Cartesian subject, from the the Freudian ego, the subject, the conscious experience, right? This is the problem, right? So free will is, in some way, it's a misnomer. People have pointed this out before. Free will is not, obviously the will isn't free. The better phrasing for this idea would be something like free choice. So are our choices free? Do the choices that we make originate in the conscious mind? That's the question of free will. That's the question that needs to be thought in order for this sort of classical, almost Kantian notion of moral culpability requiring freedom. That's the issue that needs to be thought. Is there something about me that's tied to those choices? The only reason I bring up free will and moral culpability is because he does, by the way. I don't necessarily think that the metaphysics of the will has any bearing on moral responsibility. I think that that's a mistake in Enlightenment philosophy. So yeah, I think that those are my thoughts on this. Ayn Rand, that's the other one. He brings up Ayn Rand, and Ayn Rand's notion of free will is something like the person can focus or choose not to focus, or something like this. It seems that this is a really sloppy argument. He presents it as a good argument for free will. I don't see how it is a good argument for free will. I don't think it necessarily gets around determinism. The other thing, too, is that he seems to believe that if the universe is not deterministic, then we have free will in the classical sense of free will. I don't think that follows. That seems to be it seems to be a non sequitur, right? For instance, if our brain chemistry literally just follows the laws of chemistry, right? And that's how neurological processes happen. Then those aren't governed by quantum theory per se. So you need to show how quantum indeterminacy leads to brain stuff being able to produce intentionality. I wanted to do a bit on Ayn Rand and Deleuze, because I think what Ayn Rand is really getting at there is an anticipation, let's say, of Deleuze's notion of retroactivity, which is a really interesting subject, and it has bearing on the question of free will, but I think it would probably take me 20 minutes to explicate exactly what I'm talking about. I don't really want to go through that. So I'll just leave the Ayn Rand question suspended. So this is my critique. I think that if you being inspiring philosophy, were to give some definition of free will, some notion of free will, the ontology of free will, it would be very difficult to fit Michio Kaku, Ayn Rand, and Alvin Plantinga all to that definition, because they're clearly talking about completely different things. And all of them, this is a problem with labeling, all of them then get hastily grouped together under this word free will, which I think has sort of bewitched the conversation about agency as a whole. Another way to say this is that Michio Kaku's version of free will can be true while Ayn Rand's is false and Plantinga's is false, or any other version of that. Plantinga can be right and the other two can be wrong, or something like that. They're not mutually inclusive ideas, and they don't, I don't even think that Kaku in particular is actually really talking about free will in free will proper, free will as such, let's put it that way. So yeah, those are just some thoughts. Maybe that's rambly, but yeah, have a good day.